Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Dan Houston. He's the CEO of Nasdaq-listed Principal Financial Group to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the company and the investment management and insurance industries. Dan, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, give us a little bit of background on Principal Financial Group.
Well, on a big scale, we are based in Des Moines, Iowa, but we're a global company. We do business in 80 different countries around the world, over 200,000 relationships with small to medium-sized customers, and over 33 million relationships with individual customers. Significant presence in Asia, Latin America, and in the US. It really focuses around three areas: asset management, asset accumulation, think retirement, and protection, life insurance, deferred compensation, those kinds of products.
How has COVID-19 impacted Principal and the investment management and insurance industries in general?
Well, what I find interesting is when you think about COVID and the initial reaction that first week when we had employees working from home, Jill, the one test that I asked myself is, if we had said in our strategic planning 6 months ago, how long would it take us to get positioned to have 98% of our workers working in a home environment? I might have guessed in weeks or maybe a month. We did that in 3 days. Likewise, if you said, how long do you think it would take to get all of your employees back into your operations after having been gone, you might say something like 3 days. And yet I think it could end up taking 3 months. And so COVID has changed our location of where we're doing work, but our productivity, our quality, and the convenience to our employees is exponentially higher than it was. So in many respects, it was a great way to test all of the migration that we've been making for years in the digital transformation. It just accelerated in a very significant way.
Yeah, certainly those investments in technology are paying off. How has Principal responded to COVID-19, and what are some of the innovative things that you were doing during this time for your customers, for employees, for the communities that you serve?
Well, part of it, of course, was putting our employees in a safe environment, and there's probably no safer place than being able to do that from home. That was a huge priority. The second thing, of course, we want to do is to make sure that we were taking care of our customers, making sure we had the appropriate response time, the availability to be able to conduct all the transactions that you would expect of a company that managed $750 billion. You have to have trade desks that are operating around the globe. As you know, this was not a US-centric challenge. This was a global challenge. And if you do business in 80 different countries, starting in the Asian countries, kind of reassuring as a side note to see those offices opening up again in Hong Kong, in China, in Singapore, but that rolling process. So that second thing was the customer communications, letting them know open for business, available to conduct transactions, banking, securities, insurance. We did provide some extension and some relief for our customers on grace periods relative to payment of premiums. We had some additional extensions for fees related to our 401k and our retirement plan business. So we wanted to meet our customers halfway to demonstrate goodwill on our part, that we know that many of our small to medium-sized employers are going through difficult times and want to make sure that we are there. Also, you might find this interesting, opened up a CARES helpline to help small employers understand not just the CARES Act, but also PPP, understanding the intricacies of that, making our advisors and our home office experts available to field those questions, because as you very well know, oftentimes a small to medium-sized business with 30, 40, 50 employees, they don't have a staff of attorneys or a large HR department. They're very dependent on partners like Principal to fill in a lot of those blanks.
It's interesting, while speaking with the chief executives on Trade Talks about their COVID-19 messaging, the one thing that they have said is that it's forced them to critically look at their businesses in a fresh lens, truly understand their business lines. What's your outlook beyond COVID-19 as the country reopens the economy, as it relates to Principal and your industry in general?
Well, you know, it really hits a number of different aspects of the business. But if we were just to start before you have your first piece of business, oftentimes in these institutional sales presentations or the first times you're consulting with a large employer, there is always a rush towards doing that physically in location. And I think many people are finding out that the Zoom or Teams or other video software capabilities actually makes for a pretty rich uh, conversation. And then you take that initial step, and then eventually you may find yourself working face to face. So I do think one of the changes that's going to take place is more work is done in a remote environment. That's number one. The second is how we go about measuring productivity for employees. We've got thrown into this in a pretty meaningful way. I think the tools to actually measure productivity, all of our initial feedback is it's actually more productive. We don't know what that looks like as the economy opens up. So I think there's going to be better tools for employees and for employers to monitor the productivity of employees, and are we meeting the needs? And then along with that, Jill, I think will come the security protocols, because we know we need to maintain very secure environments wherever we're doing business around the world. The bad guys will ultimately sort of catch up with a lot of this remote work environment. So I think there'll be some additional work around that. Having said all of that, I do think employees, for the most part, are going to want to have optionality to come back into the workplace. We've been in a neighborhood environment for about 50% of our jobs for several years now. This was not new to us, where people effectively check out a workstation. We've had laptops instead of desktops for a long time. And so, again, I think the idea of community and the idea of neighborhoods and being more fluid in how we structure teams. You're going after a particular challenge for the organization, bring the team together, solve the problem, disband the team, people go back into whatever remote environment that best suits them.
Yeah, certainly the silver lining of COVID-19. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on Trade Talks.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.